Welcome to Freeman of Mirth, and I'm your host, Rod Freeman. I've got some stories for you. So this installment, this is going to be like the contents of my kind of first book on my channel here, on the YouTube channel, Freeman of Mirth. And the book is called One-Way Ticket. And this book is going to focus on 2.5 years of my life when I was just 21 until I was 23, from January 1970 until June 1972. And I've got this book, One-Way Ticket, it's called again, and there's 11 chapters to it. Oh, here comes the helicopters. You probably hear that. Anyway, they're coming to get me. Black helicopters. Okay, sorry about that interruption. I'm going to go over these 11 chapters and sort of take you on a quick tour through my 2.5 years I spent abroad as an ambassador for peace, love, and flowers, and the American way of a young total idiot, which I was, out trying to discover more experiences to increase my vocabulary of art, my artistic vocabulary. That was my goal at the time. And also to escape the draft as well, and to uphold the doctrine of Muhammad Ali. Anyway, I'm going to go through these guys. Okay, and the first one, the first chapter is going to be called Vancouver to Barcelona, or Barcelona, if you're from there, they pronounce it Barcelona, like they have a lisp in Catalonia. Anyway, that will take the flight out of Vancouver, BC, that my friend Tommy and I took in January 26, 1970. And it was a one-way ticket, and that's why the name of the book is One-Way Ticket. And this first chapter, Vancouver to Barcelona, we actually landed in London, but it was cold and wintry up there. But we actually smuggled a Canadian guy into London. This is what this chapter is going to be about. I'll give you the details when we get to the chapter. But I'm just giving you the whole thing. I'm trying to do the entire trip, 2.5 years, in like 10 or 15 minutes here. So that's what I'm trying to do as an overview and a table of contents. Okay, so Vancouver to Barcelona. Well, we get to London, we hang out, we hung out in this flat, some English people. It was a whole story. And we saw the Cutty Sark, and I got some fish and chips, but it was cold, so we got out of there. We tried to hitchhike, but didn't make it. We got to France, and then we went south, and we got to Barcelona in Catalonia in Spain. And it's this beautiful city, and that's when the traveling thing just opened up for me. And I realized that I had become part of a group of people that were on the road, like permanent backpackers with no home, except what they got on their back. And they were from all over the world, and they were all young, and they had long hair, and they smoked a little pot, and they were pretty mellow people, and they all shared. If you had an orange, you'd share it with everybody. And we'd meet in these piazzas or plazas in every city around the Mediterranean. That was kind of my favorite place. It was around the Mediterranean. Life is good there. It has been for many years, and hopefully it still will be for a long time, hopefully. And but when we got there, boom, that would encompass, I think, the first chapter. And there's plenty of great stories that I've kind of given you some hints of. The next one is in Barcelona. We discovered that there was a cool place to go, and it was out of the Balearic Islands. And there was an island called Ibiza, which was a jet set place where like jet setters hung out. And then there was a little island called Formentera, and everybody was saying that was really cool out there. So Tommy and I decided to head out there. And so that's the next chapter, is going to be the cave on Formentera to Tangiers. And this has some incredible stories in it. We went to the Jet Set Island, but didn't see any movie stars or anything, so we did go to the little island, and I've got a great story about a little cave. Well, it wasn't really that little. I mean, it was a nice sized cave, about as big as this room here. And I stayed there, and we had an encounter with the La Guardia Civil in a fascist dictatorship, Spain at the time. Franco was in charge there. Anyway, I'll have to tell you that story, and then the trip down to Ceuta, I believe it was, where I had to get a boat to go to Morocco. I had to go to Morocco. Tommy and I split up right after the incident with the cave, and I took off and headed south and had some interesting experiences and got into Morocco, which was very difficult, and that's a great story in itself, too, just getting my ticket. Okay. Anyway, when I got to Tangiers, then things really opened up because I finally found a place that was completely different than America. I mean, the guys wore robes. Everything was upside down. Alcohol was pretty much forbidden by the Muslims. This is something they don't really do. But smoking cannabis was okay. So it was like totally the opposite of America. I come into Tangiers, these old guys are sitting there in their jalabas in the cafes and smoking little weed and drinking mint tea, no bars. I'm like, okay. Except in the western quarter of the cities you could find bars. But I pretty much quit alcohol right then and took up cannabis. Anyway, that is a good group of stories there from the cave to there. So that is chapter 2. Now chapter 3, I'm going to do a whole chapter just on Morocco, because I got there and this was a popular song at the time, was called Marrakesh Express by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And it was really a cool place then. And I went there and stayed in Marrakesh for about a month or so. I took a trip to the coast, had some incredible experiences, found this little town, Diabet. I've got some great stories about that. So that will be a chapter in itself, Morocco. Now, after I'd been in Morocco, I guess a couple months or so, I met a guy who'd just come from India, and he was saying how cool India was, man. We were making manjoon, if you know what that is, this guy's place, and I decided right there I was going to head to India. I was going to hitchhike to India. Young, crazy me. Okay, so that would be the next chapter, is hitchhiking out of Morocco, or trying to hitchhike. And then finally, spending a whole night staying up with these Algerian students talking politics. Man, they opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that was never in American newspapers. You might imagine some of the things they were telling me. But I'll get to that in that story. I did finally get the ultimate, awesomest ride I could have ever gotten. And I'll tell you about that. The ride went all the way across North Africa to Tunis, boat to Palermo, up through Italy, and all the way to Athens. One ride. Oh, man. Wait till you hear about that one, some of the stories there. Okay, now that one is going to go, it's going to call North Africa, Italy, and Greece. Okay, so that's number 4. That's 4th chapter. Now the 5th chapter, after I tell you about Greece, and I got an incredible story about Crete. I took a little side trip out to Crete, to a place I'd read about in Life magazine where draft dodgers were hung out. And I missed Joni Mitchell by 1 week there. And that's where she wrote a "Carrie, Get Out Your Cane" thing. Anyway, those were great times. A lot of you younger people probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but some of you older people might. It's a Joni Mitchell song that she wrote about her experiences and the place that I got to there. And there's some great stories there. Then I take a train to Istanbul. Now, this is going to be the next chapter. It's going to be called Istanbul to Afghanistan. And this is some incredible stories about getting to Istanbul, finally getting to Asia. The pudding shop, the Blue Mosque and stuff, living up in the covered bazaar. Istanbul's an incredible city. And going from there, picking up a ride in a Volkswagen van with a bunch of hippies out. They were going to Afghanistan. Well, we didn't make it because the thing blew up in Iran or Persia somewhere. But I abandoned ship and I did make it to Afghanistan. And that is some incredible stories about going across the continent of Asia there during that time, from the Middle East part of Asia to Central Asia. Afghanistan was so incredible, the nicest people ever. Those were the good years for Afghanistan when they had the king, and it was before the Russians and the United States bombed the crap out of them. And I hear it's not very good there compared to the times I was there, so I was very lucky. So I'll describe Afghanistan, getting from Istanbul to Afghanistan. And then the next chapter, chapter 6, will be Afghanistan to Swat Valley. Now, Afghanistan and Iran, or Persia, eastern Turkey, they sit up on this high plateau. When you go to India, you drop off this plateau, and it's right at the edge of Afghanistan, and you go down the Khyber Pass, and it's this legendary spot. The British Army's been up and down. Down the Khyber Pass, you go down and down forever, it seems like. You can look way down. And you drop into the Indian subcontinent, the Indus River Valley, okay? And you go from a deserty area with horses and camels. All of a sudden, you're in the land of the water buffalo, with little brown children with white turbans and white cloths, riding them around huge wagons of bananas and jungle. It's quite a trip. Okay, so that, I'll describe that again in detail. And then what I did is I immediately went up the Indus, up into a place called Swat Valley. Some of you may have heard about that because that's where they said bin Laden was hiding out or something. I don't know. It'd be a great place to hide out. But I went up there, and I'll describe, this is one of the high points of the trip, was backpacking and hiking up beyond electricity. I remember seeing the last electric light, and what was the name of the Catania or something? Anyway, on my way up to Matal Town and Mahodan, and I got up in the Hindu Kush Mountains, which are the rugged kind of part of the Himalaya chain up there. Hung out with tribes and people and stuff. Got some great stories from there. Okay, then, so I'll go from Afghanistan up to Swat Valley and getting out of there when the snows start to fall and dropping into India. Because when you drop in off the Khyber Pass, you go into a place called Pakistan, which is right next to India. And it actually is part of the original India, okay? But in 1948-49, when India got independence from the British, because the British had kind of run the show there in the colonial era, with Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, and all this stuff, they got independence. But when they did, the Muslims didn't want to be in a Hindu majority country. So they made their own country, which actually turned out to be two countries, East and West Pakistan. Okay, and so the Indus Valley is in West Pakistan, or was in West Pakistan. And now it's just called Pakistan because East Pakistan, when I was out there was almost this huge war. This is really a crazy thing. It was in 1970, East and West Pakistan had a huge dispute over an election. A lot of corruption going on out there. And East Pakistan quit and became their own country called Bangladesh. And George Harrison of the Beatles, the former Beatles, they'd split up. He did this big thing in Bangladesh, and wrote a big song and had an album about it to try and help the people out. India almost went to war. That's one of the reasons I got out of India when I did. Anyway, so I went from Swat Valley, which is in Pakistan, the Indus River part, dropped down and went into actual India, India today. And I went to Delhi, and saw some weddings, and it was really incredible. Delhi, I'll describe it to you. I went down to the Taj Mahal on this full moon that was supposed to be this big astrological deal, but I'd been having a problem for like a month or so of losing weight and not being able to keep things really in very well. So I checked myself into a Catholic hospital, and I'll tell you all about that. And they cured me, and I came out, and things started turning around from there. But I also went to Delhi and spent my last dime, my last 10 cents, on a bowl of rice, and ran out of money. So, you know, that's how crazy I was back then. Freeman, you know, the young guy, leaves America, his nice secure home where he's got everything he wants, go to the other side of the earth, the poorest country in the world, and spend your last money and run out of money. But I didn't die. I found out you don't need money to live. You just need fortitude, you know. So I started doing odd jobs for people and stuff, and borrowing money or begging money or whatever it took. And things were going great. I had some friends. I was staying in a little hotel, like pension kind of thing, next to the astrological gardens in Delhi. It was wonderful, hanging out with sadhus. There are these holy men out there. But anyway, I got to kind of wrap this up. So I'll tell you these stories in detail, but India was pretty awesome, okay? Now, because the big war was happening, I got some money from the States. My mom sent me $70 I got for my tax return. So I took that, and my friend Steve, a Canadian guy, and he was from Toronto, he wanted to go back too. He'd been out in India for like 6 months or so. And so we headed back toward the Mediterranean, and that's a whole trip in itself. It's leaving India, going through Afghanistan during Christmas time, in Iran, traveling, you know, into eastern Turkey, and finding Istanbul, back to Istanbul again. And I kind of knew the place already, you know, so it was kind of cool coming back. And ended up spending 6 months in Turkey, which is some incredible stories there. Lived with some Air Force guys near Karamsel Air Force Base. Learned all these like secrets of American politics and stuff. And there, that's a chapter as well. So we've got back to Istanbul, New Year's 71, and then the 6 months in Turkestan. Okay, so 2 more chapters left. Chapter 10 is called The Voyage of the Sea Diver. And when I was in Turkey, I met a family, I got to know a family, an Air Force guy named Bert, who was retiring from the Air Force, and he bought this 65-foot solid oak boat that had been built for the Marshall Plan. He wanted to outfit it with scuba gear and become a scuba charter boat. But he didn't know much about sailing. I knew quite a bit from growing up in a port town. And so he hired me on. He had 3 boys, aged 18, 11, and 7. And a wife who immediately left when they moved on the boat off of the base. She was this French gal who was not going to live on a boat. Anyway, we had an incredible adventure. My best stories probably are of this adventure, the voyage of the sea diver. And we traveled to Greece. I'll tell you all about the story. Visited some islands. I saved them from the rocks. We spent a summer in the harbor of Piraeus, which is the harbor of Athens. Incredible story there, probably one of my best. Happened up in the Plaka district where I got to punch out a Greek cop, defending my lady's honor, and got a bus ride downtown. This is a great story. I'll tell you about it when we get to that chapter in The Voyage of the Sea Diver, chapter 10. We ended up on taking this incredible cruise with, I think, some people that were involved with Jaws, and getting to Malta, where I learned some incredible lessons about how things operate in the world with the United States government and such. The Sea Diver we hired out to Western Seas Oil Company. There's great stories at sea off the coast of Tunisia. Working out of Bizerte there. Incredible stories. And then back to Malta. I was getting restless to get back home. I had some money I made when we worked for Western Seas. I decided to split, and that's the last chapter. It's called Back to America. Probably has one of my best stories in it. When I was almost murdered by the Sicilian mafia in Syracuse. A very incredible story. And that is in the final chapter, Back to America. Then it'll continue with the trip up to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, and then to London, and the flight back to, supposed to be Canada, but we ended up in Seattle. And I'll tell you the story. The last story would be how I snuck into Canada. You can't do that these days, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, that's going to be my book called One Way Ticket, and that's going to cover that 2.5 years. So that's what's coming up. Look for the videos as they come through. I don't know if I'll do them in exact order. I might jump around on them, but I'll number them according to chapters. Okay, so I guess that's it for me. I've probably almost 20 minutes, but you probably suffered through this. So this is Old Man Freeman signing off. And Freeple of Mirth is over and out.